All
Cool.
right.
Yeah.
Kick us off.
Yeah. Well, we're five after. We'll start kicking it off, and then let folks trickle in as they see fit. But for those of you who are on time, thank you for coming. This is before we jump into kind of like the planned events and getting to know Nick here a little bit. Just want to tell you all a little bit more about kind of like Christian and I and this like organization that we're starting. If you can't tell by all the branded stuff on our screens, it's called Alpha Tribe. We've been kind of building this for about a year now, and what we're building here is like a global community for veterans. Really just looking to bring all veterans together, whether you're transitioning now, whether you're like mid-career transition, you're kind of climbing the ranks, or you feel like you're well established. Kind of bring folks together in an organized fashion, be able to connect them in the different needs they have, run both virtual and in-person impactful and memorable events, and also provide a little bit of like an educational service and transition support that way. So this is our very first event. Nick is a friend of mine and has agreed to help us kick things off. So thank you all for being a part of that. There's much more to come. We have another one next week, and you're going to see us kind of hosting events here every month as we continue to scale this thing and grow our membership. So really excited to get started. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and I'm really pumped for this first event here with Nick. But Christian, anything you want to add before we jump in?
No, this is like our, I guess, the beginning kind of the journey, the public journey for Alpha Tribe, even though Sebastian and I have been in the trenches for about a year. So we're just super thankful to have Nick and to have all you guys here to be a part of it. There's a lot more to come. So yeah, let's get into it.
Cool. Well, so here's like kind of the game plan of how this is going to go. We got an hour here together. So we're gonna get to know Nick a little bit, let him do like a quick introduction. Then I'm gonna go through like basically a moderated Q&A. So I have some questions that I laid out, just that I feel like we'll get the conversation going. In the meantime, though, feel free to drop questions that you all have in the chat. Christian's gonna be keeping an eye on that, and then kind of towards the end of the meeting, last 15 minutes, we can just have kind of like an open Q&A session if you all have questions for Nick that we didn't cover in the moderated portion. So yeah, so we can get into the introduction. So as I said, like Nick's a friend of mine. We served in the Marine Corps together. We go way back to our lieutenant days out in sunny San Clemente, hanging out. Overlap. It's good to see each other in Afghanistan as well. And then we kind of both. You got a little bit before me, but we were neighbors in San Clemente, and then you kind of navigated the MBA path a little bit before me, and I kind of was able to stay connected to you. You provide a lot of sound mentorship to me as I was kind of navigating, getting out myself. Also tried to get a job where you were at unsuccessfully. I didn't interview well that day, but nonetheless, it worked out in the end. But yeah, Nick's, I'm happy to turn it over to you. But yeah, Marine, MBA, worked a consultant for a while, and back now in the family business, has risen to the ranks of chief executive officer. So, but I'll turn it over to you and maybe give a little more color to your background, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. Glad to be here. Glad to be here at the inaugural Alpha Tribe event. I'm sure you guys are going to be only uphill from here, so this won't be too much of crash and burn. Thanks for the intro, Nick Firestone. I'm a third generation Marine, so it kind of keeps going all the way back. Went to the Naval Academy. Joined the Marines 2011, met Sebastian. I think we actually met out at TBS in Quantico.
Yeah.
Was an artillery officer. I got out. I did sort of 4.5 years. Ended up transitioning out in right around 2015, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so, the best advice. I know there's some questions about advice, but the best advice that I got was, you have two options. You're either working or you're in school. So I didn't know what I wanted to do on the work front. So I ended up going to get my MBA at Berkeley Haas. So from the Marine Corps to Berkeley was definitely an interesting cultural transition. And then from there, joined a consulting firm, LEK Consulting in San Francisco, where I worked for a couple years. private equity due diligence on the buy side and the sell side. So I saw a lot of different companies as a result of those engagements. And then from there, I sort of interviewed back to rejoin my family brewery, which is called Firestone Walker Brewing Company. We're a California-based craft brewery. We're in about 20 states. We started in 1996, and today we're actually the number 8th largest craft brewery in the States, even though we have a limited footprint. We have about 500 employees, 3 locations, all in California, and we've got a number of different brands. But our chief flagship beer is called 805. So mostly a West Coast base. I like to say we're the sort of the In-N-Out burger of craft breweries, mostly on the West Coast. So my uncle retired. He was the CEO before me. He retired in the beginning of 2024. So it's been a good ride. And I can get more into the business later, but that's kind of the rough intro.
I love 805, but Cali Squeeze is becoming my top selection as well.
Made with love, those beers.
Awesome. Well, great to have you, Nick. Thanks for going through your background. Excited to get into it with a couple questions. Like to start off, we'll just talk about get your perspective on leadership and transitioning from the military. So can you talk about how did your experience in the Marine Corps shape your leadership style, like in corporate America, or just in general? And then did you have to adapt your leadership style at all from the Marine Corps to now a corporate environment being a CEO?
Yeah, I'd say 100%. I mean, that's and we'll get more into this, I think, but there is definitely an adaptation that has to occur. I mean, you can't knife hand somebody in the corporate world, and then there's many other things that that aren't a one-for-one translation. I was thinking about this. I think the number one thing that I learned when I was going through the process is, I think oftentimes you go to TRS or a seminar or something, and the feedback that you'll get is like, veterans are this sort of diamond in the rough resource out in corporate America. And, I'm, not to rain on anybody's parade, but I think that that isn't true. It's like, I learned very quickly when I was getting out of the Marine Corps that, that I was sort of behind the curve in many ways. I'd spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, 4 years at the Naval Academy. And there were many things that I didn't know. I didn't have a technical background, and so that that's something I think that transition seminars or groups like this need to do a better job of talking about. Is sort of instilling this sense of urgency into veterans who are entering the workforce. That like, hey, there's a big cultural shift that you're about to go through, and there are many things that you need to catch up on. So in terms of, getting back to your question of what do I incorporate in my leadership style, just because you're behind the curve, there are some things that you get to take, carry forward. I'd say, communication skills, particularly how to structure communication. So, the 5-paragraph order is actually very relevant in the civilian world. And you'd be surprised how few people sort of show up prepared, with the ability to synthesize information in a structured fashion and then communicate it back. So things like that, I think I've tried to incorporate. Other things like tenants, at least in our family company, is like a people first mentality. So in the Marine Corps, right, officers eat last. I try in corporate America, that same dynamic exists. You've got a hierarchy, and sometimes like the head of sales drives the most awesome car, and then the lowest on the totem pole gets the beater. So I try to incorporate flatter dynamic in our business. So yeah, those are a couple of the things, just sort of rambling. I said structured communication, and then I'm just rambling. So
no, I mean, communications. I think you hit the nail on the head, and this is something it's part of like the just a quick plug, like even on our education platform, we spend a lot of time, like in some of the videos recorded, talking about like that kind of that tenet, like you're not like, don't overlook what the military is giving you. Like it's not everything, but there are like 4 skills that you'd be surprised are like super valuable that you are like, but you got to be able to like harness that and then like realize your shortcomings and get up to speed.
100%.
Awesome. Yeah. So maybe we'll move over to like career growth. Like, do you have any advice for vets who are maybe they're getting out or maybe they've been out, but they're unsure of like their career path? Like you talked about being unsure about school. Like, any advice you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, the first one, just to kind of continue on that point, is this sense of urgency. You know, so I got out. I had been an artillery officer. For my unit, I actually became the S1, the battalion S1 and the S2. So I was actually getting, you know, more of a practical kind of. I spent some time in Excel when I was in my unit, and I started the transition process. I knew what I wanted to, you know, I knew I wanted to go to school, but I don't think I really had a real sense of urgency that, you know, that you know, sort of military career is ending. That road ends. Now all of a sudden you're sort of out on your own. And to give an example, I've got a good friend of mine who was he was a Marine. He was a little bit ahead of me. He went and entered the workforce. He was a sort of a climbed the sales, software sales. He climbed the ladder, you know, maybe 5 to 6 years. And I think one day he just sort of woke up and said, I don't think this is for me, you know, didn't like the company he was working for. And he said, all right, well, I'm going to take a break. And, you know, a 1 month break turned into a 2 month, 4 month. Now, all of a sudden he's had a 4 month gap from the workforce. And, you know, I mean, at some level you start to stall, and we all know what comes after a stall is a nosedive. And so I don't think it's talked about enough, is that as a transitioning veteran, you've got to have a sense of urgency. And I shared earlier, but the advice that I was given is like, you've got 2 options. You're either working or you're going to school to try to level up. And so that's kind of the first thing, is like sense of urgency. You got to figure it out fast. You know, you don't have a 6 month, 1 year window to just sort of dream up what your career path is going to be. It's like, you got to get on this now. And in most cases, you got to get on it yesterday. So talking to people, reaching out, finding, you know, just scoping out on LinkedIn. You know, another very practical piece of advice that I got was like, go today. If you're looking to get out, go today, subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, you know, get a subscription and start reading that thing cover to cover. You just pick up on the lexicon, you know, you'll pick up things just through reading about it, because you've got a different language is coming at you than what you've got in the Marine Corps or the Army or the Air Force in the service. So yeah, that's a couple things, but the number one thing is to have a sense of urgency.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, start early, right? Like even if it's just like career exploration or talking to people, I think.
Yeah, just get a foot in the door, you know?
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. What maybe like we can shift over to, we'll kind of like ping pong around topics here.
Yeah.
Can you like getting into like your kind of meat and potatoes of being a CEO? Can you give like folks like a sense of like a pivotal business decision you had to make as CEO, and anything from your military background to, like, informed your approach to do that?
Yeah. So I sort of shared a little bit about our business. You know, we're in about 24 states. When I showed up, I joined the company in 2020. And I had worked, you know, I grew up, my first job in the business was as a taproom dishwasher. I've ridden forklifts, you know, I've kind of done a wide array of jobs, helping out. But I rejoined in 2020. I was the sort of chief profit officer. So I worked in the finance department, spreadsheets, that sort of thing. And to give you a sense of the craft beer boom, it really ended in 2020. So as you can imagine, all restaurants shut down. So our basically 1/3 of our business, which is draft beer, went from 1/3 down to about 8%, kind of overnight. And so it was a very turbulent period of time for the beer business. Following that, the supply chain was all messed up, so we couldn't get CO2, we couldn't get barley. There were a lot of things that were really a big shock to the system. So as I kind of looked out at the business coming in, one of the hardest things that I had to do was make a decision about our East Coast presence. So we were in 6 states, on the Atlantic. So Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, New York, New Jersey. And we had 10 salespeople that had been there. The average time that they had been with our business was 10 years. So, a lot of people that my uncle hired. And, I looked out of the business. There's 2 rules in beer. The first one is that it's perishable. Beer's like bread, it goes bad after a certain amount of time. So you want to have beer as fresh as possible. So it's perishable and it's heavy. So the farther that you send beer, the more expensive that it is. And so as I was going through my financial analysis, I'm looking at the numbers and I'm saying, okay, it costs me 70 cents per case to ship my beer around the state of California, but it costs $5.50 to send it out to the East Coast. And and then the farther away you are from the brewery, the farther it is to sort of sustain the patient and build your brand and be relevant, and particularly for a perishable good. So we looked at it. We were effectively taking money away from supporting markets that are closer to home in order to try to sustain this East Coast business. And so I made the decision to sort of lay off our team out there, and it's brutal. It's a horrible day. Have to lay people off, particularly people that have been with us for a long time. I'd done a great job out there, and so I got on the phone with each and every one of them. We obviously had a severance and that sort of thing, but it was a tough. That was a really tough decision to make, and there's no other way. I mean, what I learned from the military, I guess, and that experience is like you just got to do it. You just sort of buckle up, communicate clearly, don't sort of wish-wash, or you just sort of call it like it is.
Yeah, that sounds like a tough scenario for sure, especially given the ties like your uncle and the business. And you just kind of hinted at the end, but anything you learned in the Marine Corps that kind of helped you prepare for like those conversations? And
yeah, I mean, I talked about a little bit with structure. I think you learn in the IPB, right? Like intelligence preparation, I knew in my, that when I looked at the data, it's like, it's speaking to you, it's telling you this is the right decision to make. And so, if you do that, if you have that type of an analysis going into it, and you feel confident in what decision it is that you're making, even though it sucks.
Yeah. To me, I hear that story. I hear, that's decisiveness in this finance, right? Like you know that it's the answer. You can't then step half in and try to step out again, right? You got to be decisive and go all in.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes you got to like shut down something so that you can drive more resources into something that's healthier. And so that was sort of a strategic withdrawal, if you will.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
we still find our beers out there, by the way, because we have distributors there. We just don't have a on the ground presence. So if any of you are in those 6 states, keep an eye out.
Yeah, we'll have to get to that at the end with the folks that are here. See where everybody's at.
Yeah.
See if we can get some beer in their hands.
Beer for sure.
Cool. Maybe I'm gonna like switch gears again over to maybe like we'll talk about like networking. It's a big thing of kind of the concept here of Alpha Tribe, what we're trying to do. So curious your perspective, just like, I mean, you and I networked. You helped me network into at least getting an interview at LEK, or maybe that final round got me. But yeah, what role is like what role is like mentorship and networking played in your career? And then, like maybe two-part, like what role has it played in your career? And then, how can veterans, how should they approach finding mentors and kind of navigating that networking?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think networking, it's going to sound obvious, but it's obviously critical. You gotta have a network of people that you can leverage. And I would say broadening the network is super important. And so, for me, I'm now in the beer business. Like I've got a veteran network. I've got a veterans in beer network. But then I have non-veteran network as well. People that can sort of complement my skill set, people who are in a position that I want to eventually be in, highly critical, people who are doing something completely adjacent. So I like talking to people who are in technology or software or something, some other manufacturing that's not beer or is not beverage manufacturing, because it's nice to pull inspiration from sort of your neighbors who are doing different things. So, I would say another reality check is just sort of, your network is not going to give you, they're going to sort of maybe open the door for you, but you're going to have to walk through. Sorry about the final round interview. I failed plenty of those. It's just sort of the way it works. So yeah, at the early stage, I would say it's particularly important. So as you're getting ready to leave, maybe while you're still in, like get as many phone calls as you can. Like you just need a ton of at bats, talk to people. I mean, you'll realize pretty quickly, like, that guy's doing something I don't want to do. He spends his whole life behind a computer, or hey, that guy, whatever it is, you sort of learn through osmosis.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then
just so Sebastian, so I interviewed for consulting my first year of business school, and I got 10 first round interviews, and I had 6 second round interviews, and I failed all of them. So I got 10 rejection letters. And my only advice to everybody out there is to save all of your rejection letters. I have a folder in my office with all of my rejection letters that I've gotten, and it's I think it's just a good practice to have. It's like you can flip that thing open and remember, keep the grudge going.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar mindset, and I don't, I try not to let those setbacks weigh on you, and you almost like know, right? Like I've had like interviews where, like I remember very very well that LEK final round in the Santa Monica office, and I just like I forget the guy's name now, honestly, but there's one of the partners. And I just walk out of his office. I was like, "Yeah, that's not well." Like he just hit me.
It's important to fail. I mean, it's obvious too, but it's super.
Some of it's luck, man. Like I was probably prepared to answer 90% of the type of questions, and he hit me with the 10% that kind of caught me off guard. Where some of the other firms just hit me with the good ones that I was ready to go.
Yeah. There's another sort of piece of advice I'd have, and in the story I'm about to share, it didn't work for me. But being bold and decisive is something that you don't actually see a lot in the civilian world. So I got rejected from one of the big 4 consulting groups, and I'd made it all the way to the final round. I had developed great rapport with the head partner, and I think I was pretty close to getting an offer. Maybe they were on the fence because the final round interview actually went pretty well. So I got notified that I had gotten rejected. And that day I sort of sat down and hand wrote a letter asking them to reconsider and saying that I would, I'd come on board for the first month for free. And just, I wrote them a letter saying, hey, I think you should reconsider. I'm highly motivated, gave them a couple reasons why, I think they should reconsider, and then mentioned I'd be willing to work for free so that they could, see me on the job. And I overnighted it. I had a courier take it to his office, to the head partner, and deliver it. Needless to say, they didn't accept, but So,
But you went all in,
vision, but sometimes being bold, pays off. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to sort of take some shots.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Cool. We're gonna kind of go back to like career growth advice. We talked about like communication and some skills that kind of help. That's like we've been talking a lot about like in career and like decisions you made. How do you think vets can like leverage those skills to stand out? Like I don't know, like maybe through your experience, maybe screening applicants for different jobs or like best practices. Like how do you stand out in the job market?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I read a lot of resumes for a lot of different types of positions. And, you don't need to do anything flashy. I mean, the courier story is a good example, but for me, the people who stand out are first and foremost the resumes, the profiles of the people who have the fundamentals right. Right? I mean, you'd be surprised how many people submit a resume for a position that's 7 pages long and they've got 5 years of work experience. And, it's like, okay, they clearly haven't sat down and talked to anybody about what the fundamentals of hiring are, right? Like there's rules around these things. There's sort of a rules of engagement. And, veterans who can figure that out, I mean, you start dropping all kinds of crazy acronyms in your resume from your time in the military, that's just not going to translate. You've got to figure out how to translate it, make it impactful, quantify your experience, because you've got a unique experience. I mean, for sure, anytime I see a veteran resume fall in front of me, it's unique. Typically, the times that it doesn't translate are when they haven't followed the fundamentals of job applications. And the way that you figure that out is by, send your resume around to your network. Go and do some practice interviews with people, go film yourself doing it. All these fundamental things that you'd be surprised, right? It's like they're fundamentals, they're the basics, but you'd be surprised how many people don't know how to just, do a layup. Like you'd be truly surprised. It's kind of remarkable. So just doing the fundamentals will make you stand out, I promise.
Yeah, and have to throw in a shameless plug here because Christian and I have done a lot of work here on Alpha Tribe, and really the concept here at its core like level. Imagine just a group chat of just thousands of veterans, and we have this like educational platform. You go into the educational platform, you're like a veteran starting square one. We have this whole like career accelerator like class where it'll like teach you about like basics of resume, teach you how to use AI, give you like all these starter templates for you to go through. And then, oh, by the way, like it's a Slack community, so you can go to the resume help channel and post it in there and just like have people like tear it up and get eyes on it and get some input. So that's kind of like what we're trying to foster here. And to your point, like how many people can't make that layup? Like we're really trying to solve that by making it super easy. Like we're giving you the resources and we're putting you with a bunch of people that want to help you, right? And in a really informal, fun environment. So I feel like we're trying to kind of solve that problem.
Well, I'm humble enough to say I'd love to learn how to do use AI for this stuff. I'm still typing like this. So
cool. Well, maybe like non-veteran advice related, just a more fun question. Can you just walk us through what it's like to be the CEO of a beer company? Like what's the day in the life of a beer CEO?
Yeah, there's no 2 days are the same. I'd say that I get to see the best sides of the company and the worst sides. The worst things that happen always come across my desk. No, truly, I mean, one thing I'm super fortunate for, and I mentioned people first at the beginning, but I am very fortunate to work with some amazingly talented people. People from sort of wide range of skill sets. So like our finance team, our brewmaster, our entire production team, marketing, we've got amazing graphic designers, a sales team. So I think for me, day in the life, no 2 days are the same, but I'm learning a ton. I'm learning a ton of from my team, and that's been super rewarding. I will say I was working in consulting before. I learned a lot about the fundamentals. I would say one other sort of piece of advice It's like Excel and PowerPoint. Like name a job for me where you don't need to know how to use Excel, like an advanced level of Excel, because everybody, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's super important. So I learned that in consulting, but it was tough for me because I wasn't working on things that I was very passionate about. And so I feel really fortunate that, the output, my work product, the output of what I get to do is something that I get to share with people. So we put a lot of heart and soul into our product, into our beer. It's made with love. It's always fresh. It's mostly unpasteurized. We have a couple of brands that we do pasteurize, but it's something that I get to make with my hands, and that's super rewarding.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How would you say your split is like when you of your day or your week? Do you feel yourself having to spend more time on like day-to-day operations and things that are going on, and then how much of your time do you spend on like strategy and vision for the company?
It's a really good question, and it's honestly what I think about the most. I think my job as CEO is to spend as much time as I can about strategy and vision, figuring out where we're going. Are we heading in the right direction? What skills do we need to be developing as an organization? I think I get dragged into the day-to-day because I need to be involved in that to some degree. So everything that I'm thinking about today is how to set up, my team and optimize my team so that I can free myself up to focus on the strategy and vision. And it's probably not the right balance, to be honest. And it's something that I think about a lot. That's a good question.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll do a couple more moderated, and then we'll see if folks have any they want to ask themselves. But let's see. Actually, this is a good question. So if you were like a veteran, again, either transitioning or maybe making a career pivot, and you were attending kind of like one of these events, like what's something like you would ask, when you have the opportunity to like network with somebody, whether they're in the career field you desire or not, but maybe just somebody that's kind of like walked that path before. Yeah. What are some good questions you think folks just ask and just kind of have in their arsenal?
Yeah, I'm a very practical person, so I'm always curious about like, what exactly do I need to do to get to where you are? What exact steps did you take? What are your pieces of advice? I mean, those types of questions to me have been an unlock in what I've asked people, right? When I sit down with somebody, it's like, okay, tell me exactly what you did, and that's what led me to sort of figure out some of the practical things that I've shared with you, which is like, have a sense of urgency, know the fundamentals. Like when you're applying, you got to know the fundamentals, figure out a way to develop your technical skill set, because your technical skill set is underdeveloped at the moment. What skill set you have developed really well are sort of the intangibles, like work ethic, dependability, perseverance. I mean, all of those things, like how to show up professionally, those things have been developed in the military in most cases. The things that haven't been are the technical sort of corporate skill set, Excel, PowerPoint, corporate communication, that type of stuff. And that's something, if you can ask questions about what you need to do to develop those, I think is for me, it's something that I'm still looking out.
I got a funny personal story about corporate communication. When I did my first job out of the military, which was my consulting internship, I was like in Denver, staffed on whatever project I was on, and the senior manager on the project was like, we had like a meeting with like the chief strategy officer, and was like, hey, I want you to like take notes. And like if anybody here remembers being like a junior, like whether you were like a private or whatever, like somebody tells you to take notes, like you're taking vigorous notes, right? Like 5-paragraph order, they're like, yeah, you got shorthand, but you're not missing, like you don't get to summarize, right? Like you don't have like the authority to like determine what is relevant and what is not relevant to you, which is like how I view. So I took these like incredibly detailed notes and like sent it to him. And he was like, dude, what is this? He's like, dude, like what's the fucking what's the key takeaways here, right? Like just tell me like the three things like we talked about that are relevant that I need to like hang on to. And it was like a complete like culture shock to me. And I had to talk to him about it. And he like destroyed basically every week. He was like, your notes still suck, your notes still suck. And by the end of the 10 weeks, he was like, all right, those are better. He's like, but I was like, I did not think going into like a consulting, I was worried about Excel and modeling and these things. And little did I know that the biggest feedback I got that I had to improve on was how to take notes in an executive meeting. So little things like that, I feel like you don't anticipate when you get out of the military. You know, you can get kind of blindsided on like, to your point, like you think your shit don't stink, right? And then it's like, there's like some really basic stuff that's not really your fault. It's just like the culture is completely different. These people that you're competing with and kind of like now are your peers in the workforce. They would never be able to be, an artillery officer or whatever, right? They like you throw them in that mix and they're going to be lost, right? Where you were an all-star, but unfortunately, you got to catch up on a lot of basic stuff just to be like at a level with them, right? So there's some humbling that comes with it.
And I truly wish that was that was discussed more, because I didn't get it. I went to TRS and, I was talking to vets and I was like, oh, I walk out in the workforce. I'm like, who wants it? Come at like, let them have it. And then I showed up and I'm like, shit, I'm behind the curve.
Yeah.
I'm behind the curve in a number of ways.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, thank you. We'll a couple questions here. Looks like I can just, so Jamie's asking, any books have been influential towards your growth and transition to civilian life?
That's a good question. When I first was getting out and going to business school, I had like a whole summer, and so I read like finance books and stuff like that. And I didn't really. I don't recommend that. I mean, I'm a practical learner. Like I didn't learn how to be a good at Excel by reading a book about Excel. Like I learned by doing, getting into a model, figuring out how to manipulate things. So I don't have a good book for you. I mean, I mostly read books for enjoyment and like, cultural. I don't read business books, like teach me how to, win 5 steps to being successful, things like that. I don't get a lot of value out of those personally. I will say, I'm a fan of the classics, and one of my favorite stories is, if you haven't heard about this, and I think this is very important for veterans in particular, but is the old story, the Socrates story of the Oracle of Delphi, and it's like, so Socrates goes out, and the Oracle tells him that he is the smartest man in Athens, and he's like, that's bullshit. I'm not the smartest man in Athens. Because I don't know anything. That's sort of what he says. And so he goes out into the town and he starts talking to all these business leaders and all this stuff. And he comes back and he says, holy shit, like I am the smartest man in Athens. And they go, why that? He goes, well, I went and met with all the business leaders, all the, big wigs around town. And they all told me that they know stuff that they don't. And so I must be the smartest because I'm the only one that's willing to admit that I don't know anything. And I've always taken that. I really love that story, and I think that humility is exceedingly rare in the corporate environment, especially nowadays, right? Like we've got this guru culture where everybody knows everything, and I'm very suspicious of that. And I think it's refreshing to hear people say, like, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't know, and I'll learn it. But anyway, kind of a tangent. I don't have any books for you. I'm sorry. You should go read Socrates.
Yeah.
Socrates.
Cool. Andrew, looks like you got a question. He said, I appreciate the honesty when you talk about the mindset about vets being diamonds in the rough, which it really isn't a thing. Where do you try to go to get that quote unquote real feedback and stay grounded? A lot of people out there live in a savvy place where every vet is unique, but getting candid feedback and perspective is huge.
It's a good question. I mean, right here.
Yeah.
Start. No, I think talking to people, having real honest dialogue. I had I would say vets who maybe from another generation, right? Like they're 20 years in the workforce, I think tend to sort of glorify things a little bit, like the good old days, and maybe forget all of the practical steps that they took after getting out of the military to get to where they are. And, and look, I am not denigrating the veteran experience. I mean, veterans are, in some sense, diamonds in the rough. There are skill sets, and I don't know to what degree it's sort of self-selecting, like successful, motivated, driven people select into the military experience. But I am a believer that there is some inculcation, there's some development that happens in the military as a result of your experience that sets you up for sort of a long, successful career. But when talking about the first steps that you take, it's like there's a practical gap that you need to be aware of. I think talking to people who are sort of recently getting out is where you're going to go to get that practical experience, because they're not reminiscing about their veteran experience in the same way.
Yeah, and I when I read that question, Andrew, I thought of another personal story myself. And I'm sure they had it at Berkeley too. When you get out and you like join the consulting club, and you're like put in these like small groups to like learn how to case interview and things like that. And I remember like, again, another humble sandwich I had to eat. We're like practicing behavioral questions, and I'm like, I'm really good at this. Like I nailed my business school interviews, and it was like some question like, tell me about a time you had to solve like an interpersonal conflict at work. And I told this story about when I was like a platoon commander, and like my XO was like this piece of shit, and me and him just didn't get along. But I told the story, I thought I crushed it. I was like, oh, this is a great story. How I like basically he was like, just we were butting heads, but then I got what I wanted basically. And like they're all like non-veterans in my small group of like 5, and they're like, this girl was like, I'm not gonna lie, like you sound really hostile with that answer. I wouldn't want to work with you. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, that's good feedback, right? Yeah, like completely had to change like my narrative. And if had she not told me that, I probably would have bombed. I probably would have 0 offers, because there was like a tone I think I was carrying with my answers that I completely had to like make a 180 and shift it. So I think finding to that point, Andrew, like as much as I want to plug and say like things like Alpha Tribe are the best, and I do believe in like the veteran networking, and veterans are going to like help you, and I think they will call you out, but we may also have a blind spot. So I think finding folks that are maybe a little like, don't just surround yourself with people that are like going through it with you.
Yeah.
Try to get some outside perspectives. So that could be veterans who are like 6-10 years into the career that have interviewed and have like seen like mistakes and pitfalls, and honestly it could be civilians. So if you like can find non-military folks that can give you like a complete different perspective and do some interviews and things like that, look at your resume, I think that would help.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. So like if you just hang out with salty vets all day, then you're going to be a salty vet and come up with things like that. So I think getting a wide range is for sure good. My last thing I got to plug, because I think my TBS instructor taught me this, which is it's such a rare thing, but is learning how, when you're out there in the workforce, how to present a solution and not a problem. And you'd be surprised how often, like even my own direct reports come to me and they're like, hey, everything's messed up here. Here you go. I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? That's a veteran skill set, not to take for granted. So I don't just want to like, tell you you're behind the curve and you're screwed and you got to catch up, because there are real things that that vets bring to the table, and it's perspectives like that. Like, hey, I'm going to give you the solution. I'm going to describe the problem to you perfectly. Like, hey, we've got this East Coast business. We're losing money. Beer's expensive. It's $5 a case to ship it out to the East Coast. We've got 10 bodies out there that we're maintaining for a low volume. It's hard to sustain. Here's what I think we should do about it. Like that's the unique thing that I think vets have brought to the table.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, like Christian's probably a great perspective here. Like Christian is not a veteran for those that weren't aware, and when we came together to make Alpha Tribe, he was really like a driving force behind it. And you can probably speak to it more, Christian, but he basically came to me, and his backstory is like, I love hiring vets. He works in sales, like in tech. He's like, I love hiring vets, and I want to hire all of them because they're great salesmen. They're great, like, SROs or whatever. And then he's like, but they can't get through an interview panel. He's like, no matter how much I love them, I know they're going to crush it. They get to these like 3-4 other interview panels, and they're not prepared, and they don't have the resources to be prepared. And that's kind of like how he was like envisioning this problem that we could solve. So
yeah, I had an interesting experience where in college I read a book by Ricks Thomas or Thomas Ricks. I don't know. I always get the name backwards. Called Making the Core, which kind of taught me about this like kind of cultural divide between like veterans and the civilian life, and that kind of like bothered me. Like I had like a real problem with that actually, and it kind of lingered with me long after college. And I just kind of saw it firsthand when I was trying to hire. I had hired veterans for my teams, and I saw some of them absolutely crush it. And some of the best people I've actually reported to were also veterans. And so I just kind of found like a cultural fit in working with people who had similar values. But when I had bigger teams and I was hiring both people who kind of were just transitioning out of the military, they were going through the Skill Bridge program, and kind of compared to, people who weren't, who were civilians, who kind of had a lot more experience, there was a big divide there. And I wish that, honestly, Andrew, to your question, I think we got there, but like, I wish those veterans had asked me for feedback, because in like 10 minutes, I would have been able to give them like 5 things that were super actionable that would have helped them prepare better for not my interview. I was giving them the benefit of the doubt, but it was the other interviews where they weren't getting that. And so yeah, I would say don't count out the civilians, particularly people who are used to working with vets, or kind of just like have a passion for the cause like I do. So yeah, and then I thought, Nick, that's like tremendous feedback. Like the first thing I have people come to me on my team all the time, like, hey, here we got this problem, and I'm like, awesome, what's your solution? Yeah. I just turn it right back around on them, and I get their feedback. And it doesn't mean that's what we're going to do, but it means that we're going to listen, we're going to get thoughts, we're going to brainstorm, we're going to come up with ideas, and then we're going to have alignment when we choose to chart the course forward.
Yeah, and the truth about it is, like, if you haven't thought about a problem enough to come up with a solution, then you don't understand the problem completely. And that's, I think that's the level up. And that's what I learned at TBS, at least.
Yeah.
Sebastian, maybe last question from Jamie, which is perfect for you.
Let's see, with Claude AI, Gemini, ChatGPT, has AI been helpful in solving problems? I mean, Nick, I don't know if you have, like, I know you made the joke about ChatGPT before, but I don't know, like, is AI at all in the beer industry? Do you use it? Do you think about it? Does your team use it?
Yeah, it's I would say it's being used. It's not optimized. I don't know how to use it more. So like our graphic designers will use it for let's say we're coming up with a beer label or and they're looking at a bunch of different options. Like they'll plug things into ChatGPT or one of them and develop a lot of iterations, and then take whatever spits out and then manipulate it in their own way, or just as a creative tool. I'm sure we're using it to some degree for some of our corporate communications. I haven't quite figured out. I'm actually on a text thread with a buddy of mine who's like he's a big AI nerd, and I'm like, give me some practical things that I can do with this. I don't quite see it yet, like proliferated into day to day. But it's for sure it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I see it used like in like where we have like a corporate GPT-4 account at DoorDash, and like we do a lot of like data analysis with SQL and writing queries, and it definitely is like used to increase productivity, because you're like, you can just drop like a query in there and be like, hey, like write another query. Like it needs like your base knowledge, and then it can like help you save 10 minutes of time, and that compounds over time, and you can have like a more productive team. So I think on the other side, when we're talking about veteran transition, I absolutely believe that AI can be useful. I don't know which which side of Jamie you're asking about, but I will say, like, had ChatGPT been around like when I was getting out, like I am like very much plugging it and like in our career accelerator course, like, is it the end all be all solution? No. But I've seen some like veteran resumes where they're like 3-4 lines long talking about like some field op you did and whatever. I'm like, dude, like if you just say like, you can literally just be like, I was an artillery officer, these are the type of like roles I held, and it'll spit out like a 75% solution that you can then go in there and like fine tune. You can give it like, you can drop in templates that you like, you can like use parameters. It'll write cover letters for you. Do I recommend that you just like ask it for a cover letter and submit? Absolutely not. But again, it gives you like a 75% solution, gives you an idea of what it should look like. Make sure like it does sound robotic at sometimes, like the people can definitely tell. I've even read cover letters when I was been hiring on my team where they almost different cover letters look very much the same. And I'm like, oh, these are both like just like the free GPT version cover letter. So yeah, it's a tool. You should learn how to use it. It can make you more productive. It definitely kind of like accelerate where you need to be. But at the end of the day, you still need to understand what you're doing, and you need to put that personal touch on your work. So
It's a good question.
yeah. Cool. Well, that pretty much puts us at time. Thank you, Nick, for taking time out of your Texas trip on a Saturday to hang out with us here.
Always happy.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you on again as we grow, and certainly we're gonna record this, or we did record it, and it'll be forever documented in our knowledge vault, and we'll be able to reference the first official Alpha Tribe event that you helped us out with. Thank you all for attending too. It's good to see you folks, and hopefully we'll have another event next week. We have a career panel, five veterans, 5 different industries. So if you didn't get that invite, we'll send it out since we got your emails. But yeah, that's all we got.
Thank you, guys. I would say anybody on the call, like, feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. You can add me. Always happy to help a vet. And I know it's a 2-way road, so I reach out to my network and get help too. So thanks for the time.
I just want to express gratitude for you and your time, man. You gave a lot of great information. Calvo, you did amazing with moderating back and forth. It was really engaging. And the coolest part about all of it is that it gets me in a better mindset and perception towards these challenges we go through. So please continue this, dude. It was awesome. And just want to say thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
See you out there.
See you guys.